8-year-old Sophia Martinez, daughter of Elena the housekeeper who has worked at the Blackstone mansion for 9 years, has always displayed exceptional intelligence that amazed the adults around her. While other children played, Sophia secretly browsed through business books in Alexander Blackstone's study, absorbing complex concepts with frightening ease. When she finds crumpled financial documents in the office trash, papers Alexander discarded after a tense meeting, her precocious mind quickly identifies strange patterns in the numbers, repetitive transactions, suspicious amounts, and transfers that made no business sense. With a child's innocence but an auditor's insight, Sophia calls Alexander's office explaining that the numbers don't add up, and describing a $600 million scheme with a simplicity that leaves the CEO stunned. Intrigued by this child prodigy he barely knew personally, Alexander decides to visit her. The shock is immediate. Sophia possesses his same unique green eyes, the same way of frowning when concentrated, and a thinking pattern that perfectly mirrors his own mind. When Alexander discreetly investigates Elena's past, he discovers a truth that will change everything. 9 years ago, his fiancée Isabella died in childbirth, but not before begging Elena, her best friend and nurse, to protect the baby from a family that might abandon a child born from an unofficial relationship. Elena raised Sophia as her own daughter, while Alexander lived all these years without knowing his true heir was growing up under his roof. Demonstrating the same genius for business he'd always dreamed of sharing with a child. If you're enjoying this incredible story of family secrets and second chances, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps me bring you more amazing stories like this one. The autumn rain drummed against the towering windows of Blackstone Industries as Alexander Blackstone reviewed quarterly financial reports. At 52, his steel-grey hair and piercing green eyes reflected the sharp intelligence that had built his empire from a small construction company into a billion-dollar conglomerate. The numbers painted a troubling picture. Profits were down 12%. 47 floors below, 8-year-old Sophia Martinez sat surrounded by business books that would challenge most college students. Her mother, Elena, had worked as the Blackstone family housekeeper for 9 years, while other children played with dolls. Sophia found herself drawn to the complex world of numbers and business strategies she glimpsed in Alexander's discarded documents. Elena Martinez had raised her daughter with love and discipline, always emphasizing education. At 34, she possessed quiet strength forged by years of single motherhood and maintaining one of Chicago's most prestigious households. She watched Sophia develop an almost supernatural ability to understand concepts far beyond her years. "Mija, it's time for dinner," Elena called from their modest quarters. She had prepared Sophia's favorite meal, homemade enchiladas. The aroma filled their small apartment, contrasting sharply with the opulent dining room where Alexander ate alone most evenings, surrounded by priceless artwork and memories. Sophia looked up from a business journal, her bright green eyes, so unusual for her heritage, sparkling with curiosity. "Mama, do you think Mr. Blackstone knows someone might be stealing from his company?" she asked innocently. Holding up crumpled financial documents she'd retrieved from the office wastebasket, Elena's heart skipped a beat. For 9 years, she had lived with a secret so profound it shaped every decision. She looked at her daughter's face, those distinctive green eyes, the determined jaw, the way she tilted her head when thinking, and saw features that would be instantly recognizable to anyone who knew Alexander Blackstone well. "What makes you think that, sweetheart?" Elena asked carefully, her voice betraying none of the turmoil in her chest. "The numbers don't make sense," Sophia explained with matter-of-fact precision. She spread documents on her desk, pointing to various figures with accuracy that would impress seasoned accountants. "These transfers happen every month, always on the 15th. always for amounts just under the reporting threshold. And these companies, I can't find them anywhere. Eleanor's hands trembled as she watched her 8-year-old describe sophisticated financial fraud with the clarity of an experienced forensic accountant. The child she had raised was displaying the same brilliant analytical mind that had made Alexander Blackstone one of the most successful businessmen in the country. As Sophia continued explaining, Elena's thoughts drifted to that terrible night 9 years ago when Isabella Blackstone died giving birth. Isabella's final words echoed, "Promise me you'll protect her. Promise me she'll know love, even if she never knows the truth." Elena had made that promise, taking the newborn and raising her as her own, knowing Alexander's family might reject a child from an unsuitable relationship. The phone in Alexander's office rang, interrupting his review. His secretary's voice carried unusual excitement. "Mr. Blackstone, there's a little girl who insists she needs to speak with you about financial reports. She says her name is Sophia Martinez, and she sounds remarkably articulate for someone so young." Alexander hesitated before answering, intrigued despite his policy against unscheduled calls. "This is Alexander Blackstone," he said professionally. The small voice that responded carried confidence that immediately captured his attention. "Mr. Blackstone, my name is Sophia Martinez. My mom works at your house, and I found papers in your office trash that you should know about," Sophia began with childlike directness. "Someone is stealing money from your company, and they're really good at hiding it." Alexander leaned back, simultaneously amused and intrigued. In 30 years of business, he had dealt with FBI investigators and forensic accountants, but never an 8-year-old claiming to have uncovered financial fraud. That's quite an accusation. What makes you think someone is stealing? Sophia took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts as Elena had taught her. There are monthly transfers every 15th for 47,832s, exactly $1 below federal reporting requirements. Then payments to 3 companies that don't seem to exist anywhere except your financial records. Maid, Alexander's amusement transformed into sharp attention. The figures Sophia mentioned matched transactions he'd been questioning all afternoon. "How did you come across this information?" "I sometimes read papers in your office when Mama cleans," Sophia admitted embarrassedly. "The numbers are interesting, and I like understanding how businesses work. When I saw these documents in the trash, the patterns seemed wrong." For 20 minutes, Sophia walked Alexander through observations with precision that would have impressed his most experienced analysts. She described transaction timing, suspicious vendor relationships, and accounting irregularities that painted a clear picture of systematic embezzlement. "This is remarkable work," Alexander said finally, his respect growing. "Would it be possible to see these documents, and perhaps meet with you and your mother?" Elena, listening to the conversation with growing anxiety, felt her world tilting. For 9 years, she had carefully maintained boundaries between her family and Alexander, ensuring Sophia remained simply the housekeeper's daughter rather than risking recognition. Now, her brilliant daughter had inadvertently destroyed those barriers. "Mr. Blackstone wants to see the papers," Sophia announced after hanging up, eyes sparkling with excitement. "He sounds really interested in what I discovered." Elena closed her eyes, feeling 9 years of secrets pressing down. She had always known this day might come, when Sophia's exceptional intelligence would draw Alexander's attention beyond simple household interactions. "Of course, Mija," she said softly, "we should always help when we can." That evening, Elena stared at the hidden photograph of Isabella Blackstone. Isabella's laughing face looked back, frozen during happier days when they were both young nurses. "I've tried to protect her like you asked," Elena whispered. "But she's so much like him, Isabella. She has his mind, his curiosity, his way of seeing patterns others miss." Alexander worked late, reviewing documents with fresh eyes based on Sophia's observations. The 8-year-old had identified what appeared to be sophisticated embezzlement involving his CFO and 2 board members, operating for nearly 3 years. As he traced the financial threads, he felt anger at the betrayal and amazement at the child's analytical abilities. The more Alexander considered Sophia's insights, the more impressed he became. Her pattern recognition, understanding of financial thresholds, and logical problem-solving reminded him of his own thought processes. There was something familiar about her analytical style that resonated deeply. Tomorrow would bring revelations that would change both their lives forever, though neither could anticipate the emotional earthquake awaiting them. Alexander arrived at the mansion's east wing the following evening, carrying financial documents and curiosity that had distracted him all day. Elena greeted him with professional courtesy that barely masked nervous tension, her hands smoothing her apron in a gesture he'd never noticed before. "Thank you for taking time to meet with Sophia," Elena said steadily, despite the emotional storm inside. "She's been excited about showing you her discoveries." "The pleasure is mine, Elena," Alexander replied, truly looking at the woman who maintained his household with such dedication for the first time in 9 years. He noticed worry lines around her eyes, her quiet dignity, and something else, a protective stance that seemed to shield something precious. Sophia bounded in with enthusiasm, wearing her best purple dress, hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, showcasing her distinctive bone structure. Alexander felt an odd recognition, though he couldn't place what seemed familiar about the young girl. "Mr. Blackstone." "I have everything organized," Sophia announced, gesturing toward documents arranged with seasoned analyst precision. "I found even more patterns connecting to what I showed you yesterday." Alexander sat down, immediately noticing how Sophia's eyes lit up with intellectual excitement. Those green eyes were remarkably striking against her darker complexion, holding intensity that reminded him of someone, though the connection remained elusive. "See here," Sophia began, pointing to transactions highlighted in different colors. "The fake companies connect to this Cayman Islands account. Every transfer happens exactly 48 hours after your company receives major client payments. Someone has access to cash flow reports and knows when you have excess liquidity." Alexander studied the documents, marveling at Sophia's methodical approach. She had created flowcharts, timeline analyses, and cross-reference tables that would impress forensic accountants with decades of experience. "This is extraordinary work. How did you learn financial analysis like this?" "I just see the patterns," Sophia replied with a slight shrug. "Numbers tell stories, and when stories don't make sense, there's usually a reason. Mama says everything has logical explanations if you look hard enough." Eleanor watched from the doorway as Alexander and Sophia discussed fraud with increasing enthusiasm. She saw how Alexander's face lit up at Sophia's insights, the same expression during successful negotiations. More troubling, she noticed their similar thinking patterns, identical head tilts when concentrating, hand gestures while explaining concepts, finger tapping when deep in thought. "Have you always been interested in business?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious about such precocious talent. "Ever since I could read," Sophia replied honestly. "I like reading about how companies work. I've read business books in your study when Mama cleans. I hope that's okay. I'm careful not to disturb anything." Alexander felt surprise and delight. "You've read my study books? Some are quite advanced. Harvard cases, economic theory, financial analysis textbooks." "The efficient market hypothesis is interesting," Sophia said earnestly, "but it doesn't account for behavioral factors creating arbitrage opportunities. And Porter's 5 forces needs updating for digital disruption scenarios." Alexander stared at the 8-year-old critiquing respected business theories with graduate student confidence. Elena felt her heart hammering as she watched Alexander's expression shift from surprise to something approaching awe. As the evening progressed, Alexander found himself studying Sophia's face more closely, puzzled by growing familiarity. When Sophia laughed at his business anecdote, something clicked, the way she threw her head back. Eyes crinkling at corners triggered profound recognition. Combined with those distinctive green eyes and obvious intellectual gifts, similarities began forming patterns Alexander's trained mind couldn't ignore. Elena saw the exact moment Alexander began truly looking at Sophia rather than simply interacting. His expression changed from professional interest to dawning curiosity, finally to something that made her blood run cold, the focused intensity of a man who built empires by recognizing patterns and asking the right questions. Elena followed Alexander into the marble hallway, her heart pounding loudly. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times, marking what felt like countdown to the end of her carefully constructed life. "Elena," Alexander began with the careful tone used during delicate negotiations, "I need to ask something, and I need complete honesty." Elena straightened, drawing on strength built through years of single motherhood and protecting impossible secrets. "Of course, Mr. Blackstone. Sophia is remarkable," Alexander said, studying Elena's face with intensity he brought to analyzing complex reports. Her intelligence, analytical abilities, her thinking process, it's extraordinary. But there's something else. When I look at her, especially her eyes, I feel like I'm looking at someone I should recognize. Elena's throat tightened, but she maintained steady eye contact. Sophia has always been bright. Perhaps her intelligence reminds you of someone in business. Perhaps, Alexander agreed, though his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. Elena, Sophia's father, is he still in the picture? The question Elena had dreaded for 9 years hung between them like a physical presence. She had rehearsed answers hundreds of times, hoping never to need them. "No," she said quietly. "He's not part of our lives." Alexander nodded slowly, his business instincts telling him there was more to Elena's story. "Those green eyes are quite distinctive. Not common in your family, I imagine." Elena felt walls closing in, but forced herself to remain calm. "Sometimes children inherit unexpected traits. Genetics can be surprising." "Indeed they can," Alexander agreed, though something in his voice suggested he was storing every detail for later analysis. "Elena, in 9 years, have you ever considered additional educational opportunities for Sophia? Private schools, programs for gifted children?" The generous offer carried deeper implications. Greater opportunities would mean increased scrutiny, background checks, formal documentation that might reveal inconsistencies in Sophia's carefully constructed origins. "That's very kind," Elena said. "But Sophia is happy in her current school. I prefer keeping our lives simple." Alexander studied Elena's face, noting subtle anxiety signs she tried to conceal. In 30 years of business, he had learned to read people's tells, unconscious gestures revealing when someone held back important information. Elena displayed several now: slight eye tightening, clasped hands, preventing nervous movement, and most tellingly, the protective stance whenever conversation focused on Sophia's background. "Of course," Alexander said finally. "I understand the value of stability for a child, but if you ever change your mind, please know I'd be happy to help arrange the best possible education for someone with Sophia's gifts." Elena nodded gratefully, privately wondering if Alexander's offer came from simple generosity or suspicions he wasn't ready to voice. "Thank you. Your kindness means more than you know." As Alexander prepared to leave, he paused at the door, hand on the brass handle polished by Elena's careful attention. "Elena, there's one more thing. The financial fraud Sophia discovered is quite serious. I'll involve law enforcement and conduct thorough investigation. There may be media attention, possibly household disruption. Elena felt new anxiety waves. Media attention meant reporters asking questions, background checks on staff, scrutiny that could unravel carefully maintained secrets. "I understand," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray growing panic. "I want you to know you and Sophia will be completely protected throughout this process," Alexander continued. "You've both done me an enormous service, and I take care of people who help my family." The phrase "my family" seemed to hang with special significance, and Elena wondered if Alexander chose his words deliberately. "Thank you," she managed. "We appreciate your consideration." After Alexander left, Elena found Sophia still buzzing with excitement. "Isn't Mr. Blackstone nice? He really listened and understood all the complicated parts about financial fraud." "Yes, Mija, he seemed very impressed," Elena replied, sitting on Sophia's bed. Looking at her daughter's animated face, Elena saw clearly the features that made her pulse race whenever Alexander was around. Distinctive green eyes, determined jaw, excited gestures, all traits any observant person might eventually connect to their obvious source. That night, Elena lay awake analyzing every moment of Alexander's visit. Each word and glance that might indicate growing suspicions. She had always known this day might come, but hoped it would be years in the future when Sophia could understand the complicated circumstances of her birth and Elena's difficult protective choices. The FBI investigation began 3 days later with Special Agent Sarah Chen, a forensic accountant legendary for unraveling complex financial crimes. Alexander had personally requested her assignment, knowing Sophia's discoveries deserved the most thorough professional investigation possible. Agent Chen established her temporary office in Alexander's conference room, transforming the elegant space into a command center filled with computers, documents, and evidence boards. When she requested to interview Sophia as the primary witness, Elena felt her carefully constructed world teetering toward complete collapse. "Mrs. Martinez," Agent Chen said with professional courtesy, "I understand your daughter made the initial discoveries. I'd like to speak with her about how she identified the suspicious patterns." Elena's hands trembled, serving coffee to the FBI agent and Alexander in the formal dining room where such serious conversation seemed surreal. "Of course," she replied. "Of course." Though every maternal instinct screamed warnings about exposing Sophia to official scrutiny. "She's very young, though." "Absolutely," Agent Chen assured her. "I have extensive experience interviewing child witnesses. We'll keep everything age-appropriate and comfortable." When Sophia entered wearing her best dress and carrying a folder of analysis, Agent Chen immediately understood why the case had drawn such high-level attention. The 8-year-old walked with confidence, made direct eye contact, and spoke with clarity impressive in someone 3 times her age. "Agent Chen, I've prepared additional analysis since Mr. Blackstone's visit," Sophia announced, spreading documents across the polished table with seasoned investigator efficiency. "I think I've identified 2 more fake companies and traced money trails to 3 different offshore accounts." Agent Chen spent 2 hours reviewing Sophia's work with growing amazement. The child had not only identified the original fraud, but continued investigating independently, uncovering additional conspiracy layers, revealing sophisticated money laundering operations spanning multiple countries. "Sophia, this is exceptional work," Agent Chen said finally, her professional composure barely concealing astonishment. "You've identified evidence that would take experienced investigators weeks to uncover. How did you know to look for these connections?" "The patterns told me where to look," Sophia explained with matter-of-fact simplicity. "When people try hiding money, they usually make the same mistakes. They think they're being clever, but they're creating new patterns that are easier to spot if you know what to look for. Alexander watched with growing fascination, noting how Sophia's analytical process mirrored his own approach to complex business problems. Her ability to synthesize disparate information, identify hidden connections, and draw logical conclusions demonstrated intellectual sophistication reminiscent of his own thought processes. Agent Chen turned to Elena with barely concealed curiosity. "Mrs. Martinez, has Sophia received formal training in financial analysis or investigative techniques?" Elena felt familiar panic flutter. "No. She's just naturally curious about how things work. She's always been drawn to puzzles and patterns." "Has she been tested for gifted programs?" Agent Chen continued. "This analytical thinking level is extraordinary for her age." "We've kept her education simple," Elena replied carefully, aware Alexander was listening intently. "She's happy in her current school?" Agent Chen nodded, though her expression suggested she found Elena's reluctance to pursue advanced opportunities puzzling, given Sophia's obvious gifts. "Of course. Every family makes their own educational choices." As the interview concluded, Alexander asked Agent Chen to step into his study for private conversation. Elena watched them leave with growing anxiety, knowing their discussion would likely focus on Sophia's remarkable abilities and the questions those abilities naturally raised about her background and potential. Meanwhile, Elena helped Sophia organize remaining documents while struggling to maintain calm normalcy. She had watched Alexander's growing interest with increasing alarm, recognizing signs of a man who built his fortune by asking probing questions and pursuing answers with relentless determination. That evening, Elena made a decision that had been weighing on her heart for days. Tomorrow, she would need a conversation with Alexander that could change everything. A conversation that might finally reveal the truth about Sophia's identity and the promise Elena had made 9 years ago to a dying friend. Elena requested a private meeting with Alexander the following morning, her hands shaking as she knocked on his study door. She had spent the entire night rehearsing words that could never adequately explain 9 years of carefully maintained deception. "Come in, Elena," Alexander called. Looking up from financial reports related to the ongoing investigation, morning light streaming through his study windows highlighted silver streaks in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of decades building and protecting his business empire. Elena entered the room where she had cleaned for 9 years, but now felt like an intruder carrying secrets that could shatter careful boundaries between her world and Alexander's. "Mr. Blackstone, I need to tell you something important about Sophia, about her father." Alexander set down his pen with deliberate care. His green eyes focusing on Elena with intensity he brought to critical business negotiations. "I'm listening." Elena took a deep breath, drawing on courage reserves built through years of single motherhood and protecting truths too dangerous to reveal. 9 years ago, I worked as a nurse at Chicago General Hospital. I had a patient there, a woman who became my closest friend. "What was her name?" Alexander asked quietly, though something in his voice suggested he might already suspect the answer. "Isabella," Elena whispered, the name carrying 9 years of grief and carefully guarded memories. "Isabella Valdez. She was pregnant, and there were complications." Alexander's face went completely still, the motionless calm that preceded either explosive anger or devastating revelation. "Isabella," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "My Isabella died 9 years ago. She was pregnant when—" "Yes," Elena confirmed, tears streaming down her face. "She died giving birth to your daughter, to Sophia." The silence stretched eternally. Alexander's hands gripped his chair arm so tightly his knuckles turned white, his mind racing through 9 years of missed connections, overlooked signs, moments when he should have recognized the truth staring him in the face. "Isabella begged me, with her dying breath, to protect the baby," Elena continued, her voice breaking with years of secrecy weight. "She was terrified your family would reject a child born outside marriage, that Sophia would grow up feeling unwanted. She knew how traditional your parents were, how they never approved of your relationship because she wasn't from their social circle." Alexander stood slowly, walking to the window overlooking the garden where Sophia often played, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of Elena's revelation. "All these years," he said finally, his voice hollow with shock. "All these years, my daughter has been living in my house, and I never knew." "She has your mind, Alexander," Elena said softly. "Your way of seeing patterns, your analytical abilities, your determination to solve complex problems. Every day, I watched her grow more like you, and every day I lived in terror that you would notice the resemblance and ask questions I wasn't ready to answer." Alexander turned back to face Elena. His green eyes, the same distinctive green eyes he had passed to his daughter, filled with grief, wonder, and overwhelming emotion. "Why didn't Isabella tell me she was pregnant? Why didn't she give me the chance to be there for her, for our child?" "She tried," Elena replied, fresh tears streaming. "She called your office several times, but your secretary said you were in important meetings and couldn't be disturbed. Isabella was proud, Alexander. She wouldn't beg for your attention, and she was afraid you might think she was trying to trap you into marriage with an unplanned pregnancy." The revelation hit Alexander like a physical blow. He remembered those weeks 9 years ago when he had been consumed with a major acquisition, working 18-hour days and instructing Margaret to hold all personal calls until the deal was completed. He had been so focused on business success that he had missed the most important call of his life. "My God," Alexander whispered, sinking back into his chair as the full weight of his loss crashed over him. "I lost Isabella, and I lost 9 years with my daughter because of my own obsession with work." Elena approached Alexander cautiously, her heart breaking for the man who had just discovered he was a father under the most devastating circumstances. "Alexander, Isabella never doubted that you would love Sophia if you knew about her. She was protecting her from potential rejection, not from you personally. She loved you deeply, but she was terrified of the judgment your family might pass on an illegitimate child." Alexander looked up with eyes that held 9 years of accumulated grief and regret. "And you've raised her alone all this time. You've given her love, education, stability, everything I should have provided as her father." "I love her as if she were my own blood," Elena said fiercely. "But she is your daughter, Alexander. She has your brilliant mind, your integrity, your way of fighting for what's right. Watching her discover that financial fraud and explain it with such clarity, it was like watching you at work." Alexander stood, pacing to the fireplace where family photographs displayed generations of Blackstone ancestors who would never know they had a new heir living under the same roof. "Elena, I need complete honesty. Does Sophia know anything about her true parentage?" "Nothing," Elena replied immediately. "She believes I am her mother and that her father left when she was a baby. I told her he wasn't part of our lives, and she never pushed for details. She's been content with the family we created together." "But she's 8 years old now," Alexander said, his voice gaining strength as he processed practical implications. "She's brilliant, curious, analytical. How long before she starts asking harder questions about her background, her abilities, her resemblance to you?" Eleanor finished quietly. "I've been dreading that day for years. Every time she demonstrates another aspect of your intelligence, every time someone comments on her unusual green eyes, I wonder if this will be the moment when questions become too pointed to deflect. Alexander pulled out a photograph from his desk drawer, Isabella taken during their last vacation together, months before her death. Her laughing face looked back at him, and for the first time he could see traces of her features in Sophia's bone structure and smile. "She's beautiful," Alexander said softly. "She has Isabella's spirit and my analytical mind. Elena, you've raised an extraordinary child under impossible circumstances." "What happens now?" Elena asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived in fear of this moment for 9 years, not knowing whether telling you the truth would bring joy or disaster into Sophia's life." Alexander set the photograph gently on his desk, his businessman's mind already considering the complex, emotional and practical challenges ahead. "Now," he said with quiet determination, "I need to figure out how to be a father to the daughter I never knew I had, without destroying the loving relationship she has with the woman who saved her life." The weight of 9 years of separation hung heavy in the room. Alexander realized that simply claiming his parental rights wouldn't automatically create the bond he had missed. Sophia had a mother who loved her, a life carefully constructed around Eleanor's protection and sacrifice. Any revelation of the truth would need to be handled with extraordinary care to avoid traumatizing the child who had already lost so much without even knowing it. "Elena," Alexander said finally, "I want you to know that whatever we decide about telling Sophia the truth, your place in her life is secure. You are her mother in every way that matters. What I want, what I hope for, is the chance to be part of her life too, not to replace what you've given her." Eleanor felt tears of relief stream down her face. For 9 years, she had feared that Alexander's discovery of the truth would mean losing the daughter who had become her whole world. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me." But even as they spoke of cooperation and shared love for Sophia, both Alexander and Elena knew that the most difficult conversation still lay ahead. Somehow explaining to an 8-year-old girl that everything she thought she knew about her family was about to change forever. 3 days later, Alexander found himself standing outside Sophia's bedroom door, holding a chess set and wrestling with emotions he had never experienced. How do you begin a relationship with a daughter who doesn't know you're her father? How do you make up for 9 years of missed bedtime stories, scraped knees and first words? "Mr. Blackstone!" Sophia exclaimed when she saw him, her face lighting up with the same enthusiasm she had shown during their previous meetings. "Did you come to tell me about the investigation? Did they catch the people who were stealing from your company?" Alexander smiled, struck by how naturally Sophia assumed he would share important news with her. "Actually, they did. Thanks to your brilliant detective work, we've recovered most of the stolen money, and the criminals are going to prison for a very long time." "That's wonderful," Sophia said, clapping her hands together. "I'm so glad I could help. Mama says that when we see something wrong, we should always try to fix it." "Your mama is very wise," Alexander agreed, glancing at Elena, who was watching their interaction with careful attention. "Sophia, I brought something for you. I thought you might enjoy learning to play chess. It's a game that involves a lot of strategy and pattern recognition, skills you've already proven you have in abundance." Sophia's eyes widened with excitement. "I've read about chess in some of your business books. They talk about thinking several moves ahead and anticipating your opponent's strategy. I'd love to learn." For the next hour, Alexander taught Sophia the basic rules of chess, marveling at how quickly she grasped not just the mechanics of the game, but the underlying strategic principles. She asked thoughtful questions about opening gambits, defensive positioning, and endgame scenarios that demonstrated the same analytical thinking that had uncovered the financial fraud. "You know," Alexander said as Sophia successfully executed her first checkmate against him, "you remind me a lot of myself when I was young. I was always fascinated by puzzles and strategy games. My father used to say I had an old soul in a young body. Sophia tilted her head thoughtfully. Mama says that about me sometimes too. She says I think about things differently than other kids my age. Do you think that's why I was able to see the problems in your company's numbers when grown-ups missed them? I think, Alexander said carefully, that you have a very special mind, Sophia. The kind of mind that sees patterns and connections that others miss. It's a gift, and with the right guidance, it could take you anywhere you want to go in life. Eleanor watched from the doorway as Alexander and Sophia discussed strategy and problem-solving with increasing animation. She could see the natural connection forming between them, the way they both gestured with their hands when excited, how they both leaned forward when concentrating. The identical sparkle in their green eyes when they discovered something clever. But she also saw something else that worried her, the way Alexander looked at Sophia with barely contained emotion, as if he were trying to memorize every expression, every gesture, every word. Elena recognized the look of a man who was struggling not to pull his daughter into his arms and never let her go. "Mr. Blackstone," Sophia said as they finished their game, "would you like to come back tomorrow? I think I'm getting better at this, and I'd like to try some of those advanced strategies you mentioned." Alexander's heart swelled with paternal pride and love. "I would like that very much, Sophia. In fact, I was hoping we could spend more time together. Maybe I could help you with your homework sometimes. Or we could read some business books together and discuss them." "Really?" Sophia's face glowed with happiness. "That would be amazing. Mama, did you hear? Mr. Blackstone wants to help me with my studies." Elena smiled, though her heart was breaking with the complexity of the situation. She could see how much both Alexander and Sophia were enjoying their time together, how naturally they connected over their shared interests and similar ways of thinking. But she also knew that their relationship was built on a foundation of secrets that would eventually need to be revealed. "That's very generous of Mr. Blackstone," Elena said carefully, "but we don't want to take up too much of his valuable time." "It wouldn't be taking up my time," Alexander said, his voice carrying deeper meaning that only Elena could fully understand. "Spending time with Sophia would be. It would be the most important thing I could do." As Alexander prepared to leave that evening, he knelt down to Sophia's level and took her small hands in his. "Sophia, I want you to know that you are a very special young lady. You're intelligent, kind, brave, and you have the potential to accomplish anything you set your mind to. I hope you always remember that." Sophia smiled up at him with complete trust and affection. "Thank you, Mr. Blackstone. You're really nice, and I'm glad we're friends now." Alexander felt his heart breaking and healing at the same time. His daughter, his brilliant, beautiful daughter, was calling him a friend, and while it wasn't the relationship he dreamed of, it was a beginning, a foundation they could build on when the time came to reveal the truth about who they really were to each other. 2 weeks into their daily chess meetings, Sophia made an observation that stopped Alexander's heart. "Mr. Blackstone, has anyone ever told you that we have the same eyes? Mama noticed it yesterday. She said it was a funny coincidence that we both have such unusual green eyes." Alexander glanced at Eleanor, who had gone very still while folding laundry in the corner of the room. The moment they had both been dreading had arrived sooner than expected, brought on by the sharp observational skills that made Sophia so exceptional. "You know, Sophia," Alexander said carefully, "you're very observant. We do have similar eyes. Sometimes people who think alike also look alike in certain ways. It's one of those interesting coincidences that happen in life." But Sophia wasn't satisfied with that explanation. Her analytical mind, the same mind that had uncovered sophisticated financial fraud, was now focused on a new puzzle. "It's not just our eyes," she said thoughtfully. "We both tap our fingers when we're thinking. And we both tilt our heads the same way when we're concentrating. Agent Chen said that really smart people often come from families where intelligence runs in the genes. Elena set down the laundry with trembling hands. Mija, some people just naturally have similar mannerisms. It doesn't necessarily mean anything special. But Mama, Sophia pressed, her green eyes moving between Eleanor and Alexander with growing curiosity. Mr. Blackstone and I think about problems exactly the same way. When we play chess, it's like we're reading each other's minds. And yesterday, when we were discussing business strategy, we both came up with identical solutions without even talking about it first. Alexander felt the weight of 9 years of secrets pressing down on him. He looked at his daughter, brilliant, curious, deserving of truth, and made a decision that would change everything. Sophia, would you like to take a walk with me in the garden? There's something important I'd like to discuss with you. Elena's face went pale. Alexander, she whispered, but he shook his head gently. It's time, Elena, he said softly. She's too smart to keep wondering, and she deserves to know the truth about who she is. In the garden, surrounded by the roses that Isabella had loved so much, Alexander sat on a stone bench and pulled Sophia down beside him. The setting sun cast golden light through the trees, creating the kind of magical atmosphere that seemed appropriate for life-changing revelations. Sophia, Alexander began, his voice gentle but serious. Do you remember when you asked me about families and genetics and how traits get passed down from parents to children? Yes, Sophia said, sensing the gravity of the moment. You said that children often inherit their parents' abilities and ways of thinking. That's right, Alexander continued. And you've been noticing how similar we are in the way we think and solve problems and even look at the world. You're a very smart girl, so I think you've probably wondered why that might be. Sophia nodded slowly, her intelligent eyes fixed on Alexander's face. I have wondered about that, and I've been thinking about my father lately too. Mama always said he wasn't part of our lives, but she never really explained why or what happened to him. Alexander took a deep breath, knowing that the next words he spoke would transform not just Sophia's understanding of her identity, but their entire relationship forever. Sophia, what if I told you that your father didn't leave because he didn't want you? What if I told you that your father never even knew you existed until a few weeks ago? Sophia's eyes widened with understanding so swift it took Alexander's breath away. You're saying that you're, she whispered, unable to finish the sentence. I'm your father, Sophia, Alexander said gently, his voice breaking with emotion. And I have spent 9 years not knowing that I had the most wonderful, brilliant, beautiful daughter in the world living right here under my own roof. For a long moment, Sophia simply stared at him, her young mind processing the magnitude of what she had just learned. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, not surprise, but recognition, as if part of her had always known the truth. That's why we're so alike, she said wonderfully. That's why I love numbers and strategy and solving puzzles just like you do. That's why Agent Chen said I had a gift for seeing patterns, because I inherited it from you. Alexander nodded, tears streaming down his face. Yes, sweetheart. You are my daughter, and I'm so incredibly proud of the amazing person you've become. Sophia was quiet for another moment, then asked the question Alexander had been dreading. But why didn't you know about me, and why didn't Mama tell me the truth? Alexander wrapped his arm around Sophia's shoulders, drawing strength from her presence as he prepared to share the most painful chapter of his life. Sophia, do you remember me mentioning someone named Isabella during our conversations about business and strategy? The lady in the photograph on your desk, Sophia said immediately, her analytical mind making connections. You said she was very important to you, but that she died a long time ago. Isabella was your mother, Alexander said softly. Your birth mother. She was the most wonderful, kind, intelligent woman I ever knew, and I loved her very much. But she died the night you were born, and I never knew she was pregnant with you. Sophia's face showed a mixture of wonder and sadness as she processed this revelation. So Mama Elena isn't my real mother. Elena is absolutely your real mother in every way that counts, Alexander said firmly. She raised you, loved you, sacrificed everything to give you the best life possible. Elena was Isabella's best friend, and Isabella asked her to take care of you because she was afraid my family might not accept you. Why wouldn't your family accept me? Sophia asked, her voice small and vulnerable for the first time since Alexander had known her. Alexander felt anger at his parents' prejudices, even years after their deaths. My parents had very old-fashioned ideas about what kind of person I should marry. They thought Isabella wasn't good enough for our family because she came from a working-class background. Isabella was proud and independent, and she was afraid that if something happened to her, my parents might reject you or treat you as less important than other family members. But you wouldn't have rejected me, Sophia said with the confidence of a child who had already formed a strong bond with the man she now knew was her father. Never, Alexander said fiercely. If I had known you existed, I would have moved heaven and earth to be part of your life from the very beginning. I would have fought anyone who tried to keep us apart. Sophia leaned against Alexander's side, and he felt his heart swell with paternal love and protective instincts he had never experienced before. What happens now? She asked. Am I still Sophia Martinez, or am I someone else? You are Sophia Martinez Blackstone, Alexander said. You are Elena's daughter, and my daughter. And you are the heir to everything I've built. But more importantly, you are exactly who you've always been. Brilliant, kind, curious and brave. Nothing about who you are as a person changes because of what we've learned about your parentage. Will I still live with Mama Elena? Sophia asked, and Alexander could hear the worry in her voice. Of course, Alexander assured her. Elena will always be your mother, and this will always be your home. What I'm hoping is that now I can be part of your family too. I'd like to spend more time with you, help with your education, teach you about the business, and just be your father if you'll let me. Sophia looked up at him with those distinctive green eyes that marked her as unmistakably his daughter. I'd like that very much, she said simply. I've always wondered what it would be like to have a father who understood how my mind works and who could teach me about the things I'm interested in. There's one more thing, Sophia, Alexander said carefully. This discovery changes some very important things about your future. You're not just my daughter, you're my heir. That means someday, when you're much older, you could inherit Blackstone Industries and everything that comes with it. But that's a conversation for later. Right now, I just want to focus on getting to know my daughter and making up for 9 years of missed time. Sophia was quiet for a moment, then asked, Does this mean I can call you Dad instead of Mr. Blackstone? Alexander felt tears spring to his eyes again. I would love that more than anything in the world. Dad, Sophia said experimentally, then smiled. I like how that sounds. As they sat together in the garden, watching the sun set over the estate that was now truly Sophia's home in every sense, Alexander marveled at how naturally his daughter had accepted the truth about her identity. But then again, he reflected, she was Isabella's daughter, brave, adaptable, and strong enough to handle whatever life brought her way. The hardest conversation was over, but Alexander knew that their journey as father and daughter was just beginning. There would be legal documents to change, educational decisions to make, and a lifetime of memories to create together. But for now, it was enough to sit in the garden with his remarkable daughter, finally able to love her openly as the precious gift she had always been. Elena found them in the garden an hour later, both absorbed in animated discussion about chess strategy and business principles. Seeing them together, Alexander's hand resting protectively on Sophia's shoulder, their identical expressions of concentration as they analyzed a complex problem, Elena felt a mixture of joy and terror at what the future might hold. "Mama!" Sophia called out, running to Elena with excitement sparkling in her eyes. "Did you know? All this time? Did you know that Mr. Blackstone, that dad, was my father?" Elena knelt down to Sophia's level, taking her daughter's hands in her own. "Yes, Mija, I knew. I've known since the day you were born, and I know you must have questions about why I never told you the truth." "I do have questions," Sophia said seriously. "But I understand why you kept it secret. You were protecting me, weren't you? Just like Isabella, my birth mother, asked you to do." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears at Sophia's mature understanding. "Your birth mother was my dearest friend, and she loved you so much that her last thoughts were about keeping you safe and happy. She asked me to raise you as my own daughter, and that's exactly what I did. You are my daughter, Sophia, in every way that matters." "I know that, Mama," Sophia said, throwing her arms around Elena's neck. "You're the one who taught me to read, who helped me with my homework, who made me feel special and loved every single day. That doesn't change just because I found out about Dad." Alexander approached them carefully, aware that this was a delicate moment for the family they were all learning to become. "Elena, I want you to know that nothing about our arrangement needs to change, unless you want it to. You are Sophia's mother, this is your home. And I would never do anything to disrupt the beautiful relationship you two have built. But some things will change, won't they?" Eleanor asked practically. "Sophia is a Blackstone heir now. There will be legal matters to handle, educational decisions to make, social obligations, all of which we'll navigate together," Alexander said firmly. "As a family, Elena, I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. You saved my daughter's life, gave her love and stability, and raised her to be the remarkable person she is today. I would be honored if you would help me learn how to be the father she deserves." Sophia looked between the two adults who loved her most in the world, her sharp mind already understanding the complex dynamics at play. "We're going to be okay, aren't we? All three of us. We can be a family, even though it's different from most families." "We're going to be better than okay," Alexander said, pulling both Eleanor and Sophia into a gentle embrace. "We're going to be extraordinary, because we're going to face everything together." Over the following weeks, their new family dynamic began to take shape. Alexander legally acknowledged Sophia as his daughter and heir, setting up trusts and educational funds that would secure her future, regardless of what happened to his business empire. Elena remained as Sophia's primary caregiver, but now Alexander was present for homework help, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures. The most remarkable change was in Sophia herself. With the mystery of her parentage finally solved, she seemed to blossom with new confidence and security. She threw herself into advanced studies that Alexander arranged, tackled complex business concepts with enthusiasm, and began talking about her dreams for the future, with the assurance of someone who finally understood her place in the world. "Dad," Sophia said one evening as they worked together on a particularly challenging mathematical proof, "I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up." "Oh," Alexander said, setting down his pen to give her his full attention. "And what have you decided?" "I want to run Blackstone Industries someday," Sophia said with quiet determination. "But I want to do it differently than it's been done before. I want to create programs that help other kids like me, kids who are really smart but don't have the same opportunities I have now. I want to use the company to make the world better, not just to make money." Alexander felt his heart swell with pride. His 8-year-old daughter had just articulated a vision for corporate social responsibility that would impress Harvard Business School professors. That sounds like an excellent plan, sweetheart. And I promise I'll do everything I can to help you prepare for that responsibility. Will you teach me everything you know about business? Sophia asked eagerly. Everything, Alexander promised, but remember, you already know the most important lesson of all, how to see problems that others miss and find solutions that make things better for everyone. That's the kind of leadership the world needs. As Elena listened to father and daughter planning their shared future, she felt a deep sense of peace settle over her heart. For 9 years, she had carried the weight of Isabella's secret alone, wondering if she had made the right choices for the child she loved so much. Now, seeing Sophia flourish in the security of knowing exactly who she was and where she belonged, Elena knew that all the fear and sacrifice had been worth it. The promise she had made to a dying friend had been kept. But more than that, it had created something beautiful, a family forged not by blood alone, but by love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that form when people choose to protect and nurture each other through life's greatest challenges. 1 year later, Alexander stood at the podium of the Chicago Children's Hospital annual benefit gala, looking out at a crowd of the city's most influential philanthropists and business leaders. Beside him, 9-year-old Sophia Martinez Blackstone waited patiently in a beautiful blue dress, her confidence and poise remarkable for someone so young. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, his voice carrying the authority that had made him one of the most respected CEOs in the country, "I want to tell you about the most important business discovery of my career. It wasn't found in a boardroom or a financial report. It was discovered by an 8-year-old girl who saw patterns that experienced adults had missed, and who taught me that the most valuable assets in any organization are often hiding in plain sight." The audience murmured with interest as Alexander gestured for Sophia to join him at the microphone. She stepped forward without hesitation, her green eyes sparkling with the same intelligence that had first caught her father's attention. "My name is Sophia Martinez Blackstone," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the elegant ballroom. "A year ago, I was just the housekeeper's daughter who liked reading business books. Today, I'm here to announce the creation of the Isabella Valdez Foundation for Gifted Children, named after my birth mother, who believed that every child deserves the chance to reach their full potential, regardless of their background. The applause was thunderous, but Sophia waited calmly for it to subside before continuing. The foundation will identify children from all backgrounds who show exceptional analytical abilities, and provide them with educational opportunities, mentorship, and support. Because talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't always reach the places where it's needed most. Alexander felt tears of pride gathering in his eyes as he watched his daughter command the attention of some of the most powerful people in Chicago. In just 1 year, she had grown from a curious child into a young philanthropist with a clear vision for how to use her privileges to help others. "But this foundation isn't just about me or my family," Sophia continued. "It's about honoring all the Elena Martinezes of the world, the people who sacrifice everything to protect and nurture children who aren't even their own biological family. My mama Elena taught me that love isn't about genetics or legal documents. It's about choosing to show up every day and help someone become the best version of themselves." Elena, sitting in the front row with tears streaming down her face, felt the recognition of her sacrifice and love in front of hundreds of witnesses. She had spent years invisible in the background, and now her daughter was ensuring that her contributions would be celebrated and remembered. Alexander took the microphone back as Sophia stepped closer to his side. "The Isabel Valdez Foundation has already received its founding endowment of $50 million from Blackstone Industries," he announced. and we're committed to growing that fund through ongoing corporate contributions and private donations. But more than money, we're offering mentorship, guidance, and the promise that exceptional children will never be overlooked simply because they don't fit traditional expectations. After the gala, the three of them sat in Alexander's study, reflecting on the evening's success and the journey that had brought them together. Sophia, still in her formal dress, but with her shoes kicked off, was curled up between Alexander and Elena on the leather sofa, looking through thank-you cards from other attendees. "Dad," Sophia said thoughtfully, "do you think Isabella would be proud of what we're doing with the foundation?" Alexander exchanged a meaningful look with Elena before answering, "I think your birth mother would be amazed by the incredible young woman you've become, and I know she would be grateful that her sacrifice led to something that will help so many other children. And I think," Elena added softly, "that she would be especially happy to know that you understand the difference between being given opportunities and earning them. The foundation will help children who are willing to work hard and dream big, just like you do." Sophia nodded seriously, then smiled with the pure joy of a child who felt completely secure in her family's love. "I'm glad we found each other," she said simply, "even though it happened in a scary way with the financial fraud and the FBI investigation. I'm glad that my curiosity about numbers led me to discover who I really am." "Sometimes," Alexander said, pulling both Sophia and Elena closer in a family embrace, "the most beautiful discoveries come from the most unexpected places. Your analytical mind didn't just save my company money. It brought our family together and gave us the foundation for something much more valuable than any business success." As they sat together in the quiet study, surrounded by the books that had first captured Sophia's imagination and the financial documents that had started their incredible journey, Alexander marveled at how profoundly his life had changed. A year ago, he had been a successful but lonely businessman, focused on profits and acquisitions. Now, he was a father to an extraordinary daughter and part of a family built on love, sacrifice, and shared commitment to making the world better. The Blackstone legacy would continue, but it would be shaped by Isabella's compassion, Elena's selfless devotion, and Sophia's brilliant mind and generous heart. And Alexander knew that this legacy, measured not in dollars but in lives changed and opportunities created, would be the most important business he would ever build. Outside the study windows, Chicago's lights twinkled like stars, full of promise for all the gifted children who would soon discover that someone believed in their potential and was willing to invest in their dreams. The little girl who had once found discarded financial documents in a trash can had grown into a force for change, proving that sometimes the most powerful revelations come from the most unlikely sources. The story that began with a curious child's phone call about suspicious numbers had become a testament to the transformative power of love, truth, and second chances, and a reminder that family is not just about who shares your DNA, but about who chooses to believe in your dreams and help you reach for the stars.